Howdy, folks. How y'all doing today? Everything coming in clear with regards to the mic, the music, the stream, anything of that nature? uh, Man, I haven't streamed in such a long time. I really hope everything's working, because if not, I'll be very, very upset. And a good evening. Audio is only coming in through one ear. Oh no. I must fix that. Through the advanced properties. That should be fixed now. Yeah, it's because of the focus on my camera there. Is the audio coming in? Okay, audio is not balanced. It's still not balanced? It is fixed. Okay, so I'm going to keep it as it is right now because it seems like some folks are saying that it's fixed. If it is, fantastic. Um, Hello, everybody. You are speaking a lot, and there's a lot to go over here. Hopefully, yeah, stream lag. Okay, I get that. That's a part of the game. It has been an intensely long time since I've streamed, so I didn't even have my setup, which I haven't actually put together in a while. As a note to the folks on the stream, there is a non-zero chance that a baby may need my assistance. All of my kids are in bed right now, but if something happens, I may have to jump out for just a moment, but who knows? Anyway, yeah, it's good to be streaming again. I hope you all have had a chance to see the new video. Pretty proud of that. Yeah, corporate law, very, very easy. OBS, very difficult. I do my best, but it's funny because when I talk to my partner about doing this sort of stuff, even she considers YouTube as my main and the whole lawyer thing as a side gig. Don't tell my employer I said that, but that's even her priority of what I do. Like when she introduces me to folks, she doesn't say, "Here's my, here's my spouse. He's an attorney." It's like, "Here's my spouse. He has a YouTube channel. He's a YouTuber." And I was like, "Okay," because I mean that's far more interesting, I guess, than the whole lawyer thing. So, I see what you're doing there, internet account. You're trying to get my social security information and banking information, now threatening me in a very specific way. All right, folks. So let's see if we can discuss what we wanted to discuss here today, which just had the release of the monster missing from the monster manual. It's kind of an interesting topic to go into, and a lot of folks seem to, not a lot of folks, a vocal minority of commenters have seemed to like gone into it with sort of a like, why do you want them in the monster manual? I thought you were wanting them out of the monster manual. You keep flip-flopping, going back and forth. To be perfectly honest with you, it's like one of those circumstances where I just think that everything should be in the monster manual for ease. That's like a gameplay type thing. But I was sort of using that, and I think most people got this. I was sort of using that as a jumping off point to discuss monsters in general and dehumanization as like a topic, right? I once saw somebody comment that my channel is about D&D, but not about D&D. And I think that's somewhat accurate. I love talking about tabletop RPGs. I love talking about D&D. And I like using it as a medium to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. And obviously with the channel, I kind of make what I make. And that's part of the reason why I didn't include any sort of D&D specific nomenclature or usernames in my channel when I created it, was because I wanted the freedom to be able to make whatever I wanted to make. But a lot of the times what I want to make is related to D&D, and I try to find that relationship if I can. And yes, Pachycephalosaurus, or excuse me, Pachycephalosauria, which is I think might be one of my kids' favorite dinosaurs. More pre-made content in the manual, the easier the game is to run, and that was like the beginning and end of the point of putting humans or orcs in the monster manual, is just ease of running, you know. And I guess the utilization of the thing like the tough is easy to do, but I don't know. Whenever I can find an excuse for more variety, I try to use that. But for me personally, I mean, I've been running this game for over 25 years. I can make up a monster on the fly, just off the top of my head, you know, and fit it with a random assortments of abilities and stats, or create stats at the drop of a hat. Like, my players will be like, I cast a spell. What's the DC? I roll a 20 and I think it's reasonable. Like, it's it can be as easy as that sometimes. The internet account, technical sense, yes, I haven't found a monster called humans, but there are enemies meant to be default humans around. Yeah, I mean, you get the point of the video. But back in the old Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the first AD&D first edition, there was just men. That was a listing in the monster manual, which is like, and then it went off into like Berserker and all this other stuff, and like all these different types of humans that could be enemies in the game, or, you know, monsters in the monster manual. And I don't know, it's one of those weird things where there are some things about the history and tradition of D&D that I just, maybe I'm stuck on because I've been playing it since I was a, you know, child in the 90s. Late 80s, early 90s, right? And while I have this amazing affinity towards the AD&D Monster Manual specifically, I would say that I probably learned more as a second edition player than a first edition player. My current Oblivion race, I'm an orc. Yeah. All else fails, I'm probably going to be an orc. I love orcs. Orcs are just my favorite. In fact, I might be guesting on a podcast to discuss my love of orcs. So there's that too. So, Pathfinder, TIMD, Pathfinder NPC core is a conspiracy theorist who can gaslight passerbys into helping them defend them from the party, and a wealthy vigilante who has mountains of gadgets and mimes. Interesting. Yes, that is absolutely correct. The old monster manuals had all the PC races as monster templates. If humans had an entry in the monster manual, what unique abilities would they have? I don't know. I think we have a hard time in TTRPGs differentiating humans from fantastical creatures. Like, what we generally see is that they make fantastical creatures by starting with human and then adding flavor to it. And I sometimes wonder, like, what should be removed to differentiate humans from those other folks? I don't know if I have a good answer to that question. I would not be displeased if WotC did something similar, put monsters in one book and humanoid potential enemies in another. I mean, if they were back in the old days where they created supplements all the time and released, soft cover books and things like that, I think we would do more of that. But I don't know what WotC's doing with D&D, honestly. And there are times where I wonder why I'm still playing it. And I think it's a lot of legacy. It's a lot of what my players are used to in both of my games. I run two different games. I run a game for my friends, and I run a game for my family, which is a multi-generational D&D game. Because we have 3 generations of my family playing that game. And I mean, that game, that's just, they all know D&D. And that's why we play it. But I keep wanting to introduce other stuff. And I don't know. Someday I'm going to get them to do it. Play some Savage Worlds or something like that. Oh, chat's moving too fast. I'm going to have to look over here. Can I pop out this chat? Pop out chat. Okay, there we go. Be easier to scan through it here. All right. Yep. All PCs races were in the monster templates. Yeah, I understand that the new monster manual is completely divorcing species from culture. No more monocultures, no more default cultures. And that's... I mean, it's a double-edged sword, because it can get to the point where, everything's generic, blended, non-specific European fantasy. And I'm not sure if I like that either. I like having cultures in there. And I think if they leaned more into... I think a lot of that could be solved by leaning more into, an original setting that they just created. If they actually put the time and effort into creating an actual good, solid setting that could represent multiple cultures, and maybe some of them are related to real world cultures, maybe some of them are not, but I mean, it's so kind of milquetoast and generic at this point that it's kind of annoying, because at this point there are no cultures inside of D&D, so, and that seems weird as well. They don't even specify if it's a European culture or anything like that. But yeah, it's something. And I think of these things to try to facilitate new DMs to be able to go in and make it. Because for me, I do that. I go in and I create cultures and entire worlds. That's part of the fun for me as being a dungeon master. But not everybody has time for that. Not everybody has the want to do that. And a lot of new dungeon masters don't even know how to do that. So I try to be considerate of them when I think of the books specifically, because there's a lot of this stuff that I just sidestep, and then a lot of experienced game masters just sidestep. Yeah, get hung up on the word monster as opposed to something like creature. I don't want to change the name of the book, though. I love Monster Manual. It has a wonderful ring to it. Yeah, writers are humans and consider ourselves a default. Gotten into speculative evolution. Works in my setting that evolves species of boar, tusks and pig noses, different hand structures. That's fascinating. I feel like Arcanum tried that, the PC game back in the day. Yeah. Oh. A game with the orc origin idea. They were descendants of Enkidu, who worshipped Gilgamesh, but were mangled to the pronunciation of Grumsh. That's one of the things that I love doing. In any setting that I create, I like to include Saint Cuthbert, which is a deity from what's it? It's the basic setting now, and why can't I? It's Gary Gygax's personal setting, Greyhawk. There we go. And I think I heard somewhere that he actually based that off of the actual Saint Cuthbert, because there is a Saint Cuthbert, and I like the idea of transporting him into my fantasy world. That is, it is a Catholic monk, Saint Cuthbert, who inadvertently became a deity in in this fantasy world, and he's very upset about it. Yeah, I mean, I would love that internet account. Like, they need to. I know that a lot of folks love making it up, and I know that a lot of folks lean on the game master to make it up, but we can't assume that everybody's like that. I know tons of game masters who don't do it because they don't want to create a world. So there is that. Ooh. Fantasy races can be replaced with other stuff like Eberron's dragon-marked houses, magic bloodlines, like sorcerers. Yeah, and that's awesome. I love that. I don't actually really feel the need for elves and orcs and dwarves and all that sort of stuff to exist in a fantasy world. I think a lot of modern fantasy doesn't have that. Like, I've never heard of that in Sanderson's books. I've only read a couple of them. I'm not a huge fan of Sanderson. That's a whole different can of worms. He's fine. If you like him, that's fantastic. He's not bad or anything. It's not my cup of tea. But I don't see a lot of modern fantasy that goes into the Tolkien-esque stuff. A lot of them are just humans in different varieties. I was rereading Stephen Brust and his Vlad Taltos books. And there it's just like humans and long-lived taller humans type thing. Maybe you could consider them elves, but that's it. And everybody's just marked by their houses. And humans can be in the houses, but sometimes they're not. It's actually pretty well thought out. And they're kind of funny, because everybody speaks like in a modern tone as opposed to faking some sort of odd Shakespearean thing. Can't have a monoculture if there are no cultures. Yes. Bettini. Oh, thank you. Thank you for enjoying the channel. I enjoy making the videos. And it's funny because, like, sometimes I need to make thumbnails or titles that draw in audiences and sort of bring in those D&D audiences and then sneak in the fact that I'm going to talk about something else. I had a comment recently that was like, I had no idea how a video about a monster missing from the monster manual would take 30 minutes to talk about. But then I watched your video and I was like, okay, time well spent. And I was like, see, I got him. But it feels weird sometimes, because sometimes I'm making these thumbnails and titles and, you know, it almost feels like I have to get people into the video. And then it's like, hey, I'm going to be talking about some real stuff here. So if that's what you're into, great. Let's get into that. So I all I can say is, like, hit the bell icon so that you're notified when a new video comes out, because some folks don't even realize they're my videos until they get into it. What can I say? I don't really get all of the intricacies of this odd YouTube game that we play, but, you know, it's wild. More magic, less biology, and evolution. I mean, both ways. I could go both ways. I love it when it gets weirdly scientific in a fantasy realm, and I love it when it's just wildly magical and nothing makes sense. I think it's just like my mood. And that's part of what I miss about, like, second edition D&D, is not the mechanics of the game. It's not the weird mess-ups that they have or the oddly insensitive sections of it. But, like, there was a setting for everything. So if you wanted a high fantasy setting, a low fantasy setting, a post-apocalyptic setting, you could find it. It was wild. I loved that. I loved the variety of settings as opposed to generic fantasy settings. Um, I'm a little, I don't know. It's been 25 years. I'm getting a little tired of it. Um, if we did learn more magic and IRL folklore, we could have dwarves from Tolkien become dwarves from myths. I mean, I that's the one thing that gets me about European fantasy. People's like, I'm tired of European fantasy. I'm not tired of European fantasy. I'm tired of this fake European fantasy. This like weird muddled soup of Tolkien that we're still going back to the well for, because there is a vast difference between English fantasy and Norse fantasy and Germanic fantasy and, Slavic fantasy. All of those are European, generally speaking, but they're very different in their texture, in their cultures, in their myths, in their monsters. And just like I want to see more representation of like Eastern or African or Asian or Mesoamerican cultures and fantasy, I'd like to see more actual European fantasy. Come to think of it. And more original stuff. Just get creative with it. And stop using stuff as a basis. So. Alright. Let's see if I can catch up. Like fantasy races, to explore, experience things that are very different. And see those interactions. Yes. I am very much a proponent of like playing things that are different than yourself and experiencing that. Now, I know a lot of people are like, don't play a minority character if you're not a minority, and I get their arguments. I do, and it's tricky, But if you have the right GM, if you have the right players, then I think it can work out fine. You just got to know your stuff. And I don't think everybody knows it, and if you're not comfortable doing it, don't do it. But I remember seeing online a discussion where somebody was having a discussion about, you should never play out racism in a tabletop game. And they were saying it's because, the GMs don't know how to handle it. And they were talking to a professor of race and racism and gender, who teaches this at the academic level, who was also a trans man. Like, he had the whole it was like his life experience and his academic experience made him like incredibly qualified to run a game about discrimination, if he wanted to tactfully discuss that issue. So I mean, if you have the ability to, I can't force you to play your game in a certain way, right? I don't have that ability. I'm just trying to give advice and let people think about it. That's the whole point of my channel. Not to tell you how you play your game, but to have you think about how you're playing your game and living your life a little bit. I gotta catch up now. Greyhawk is a short example blurb. You don't need 300 pages to have a workable setting. You really don't. You can start off very, very small. I like Matt Colville's advice about... yeah, it was Trooper. The person was arguing with Trooper. and Trooper's like, no, I'm pretty good at knowing my stuff. Trooper and I are friends, though. So I was just kind of watching it, and it was like, you picked a fight with the wrong person on that one, I think. Watched an hour about dehumidifiers today. 30 minutes about my favorite subject. I used to have a dehumidifier. No, I had a humidifier. Never mind. Sorry. All right. Considering how many races and ancestors are compatible, creating half-elf, orc, dragons, how do you feel about eugenics in the game? I mean, that's a whole video. It's... and I'm not sure 100% what you mean by the question. Is like, eugenics as being something that's subtly snuck into a lot of games, or playing with a game that has eugenics as a theme. If all the players are fine with it and you got a good grasp of it, then you can tackle whatever themes that you want. Okay? Just be mindful of it. Okay? I mean, again, I can't stop you from playing whatever games that you want. Be considerate of who you're playing with. Make sure everybody's got buy-in. Because if you want to tackle a subject like that, it's a more serious version of this, but it's the same as if you wanted to tackle a sci-fi game versus a fantasy game. You got to make sure your players are on board with it, and everybody understands what's going along with that game. Okay? As long as they all have buy-in, everybody gets what's going on, have fun with your game. Just be mindful of it. Think it through. Don't fall back into nasty tropes. TSR was pushing paper back in the day. That is absolutely true. Let's see. Yeah, generic medieval fantasy. I just... Oof. Yeah, it's rough. Ars Magica. Same. I want to buy so many more books, but I don't want to buy something unless I can probably play it. And that stops me from buying a lot of books. Korean fantasy novel, manhwa, where there are no orcs, but a race of human-like frogmen who are a warrior race with regeneration and live by being true to their desires, which was very interesting to me. Was it tteokbokki? Or not tteokbokki. Tteokbokki is a food. What am I thinking? I was thinking of what is the equivalent of Korean, like, goblins, or the common term they use for it, and I can't think of the Korean word for it right now. Is it dokebi? It's been a while. Sorry. My Korean's rough. It's worse than my Spanish, and my Spanish is rough. Tato. Phenomenal name. Hey, Kimchi. I want to say I love your videos. Really appreciate you putting out your knowledge and expertise. Here's the thing. I don't like talking about something unless I have a little bit of background in it. So that makes me avoid some topics. Because if I don't know what I'm talking about, I get, not cool. A lot of YouTubers like talking about stuff they have no idea what they're talking about. I don't like being that guy. Eugenics, I hardly know. That's terrible. Imagining elves being afraid of extinction for prolonged contact, even peaceful with humans, which could generate explain racism, isolationism. Oh, in that sort of thing, like, dirty little secret. I enjoy diving into those topics in my games. And I have buy-in for my players, but here's the thing. It's like what I mentioned in the video. Like, having an understanding of why people have these nasty predilections, why they have these terrible things that they do, why racism exists, why isolationism or some of the nasty kind of ideologies exist. I like going into that and digging into it so that folks understand. Like, I set up situations routinely where my players will come up against two groups that hate each other, and they're looking for the easy answer of who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. And I try to set it up so they see a circumstance that's happening and are just like, wait, who are we supposed to back? Who are we supposed to be working with? And I take kind of two steps back. I'm just like, well, that's up to you, because the reality of most of these conflicts that we see, almost any conflict in the world, is that it is much more complex and much less good versus evil than we like to give it, like we like to frame it. And like there are lines, there are clearly situations where someone is worse than the others sometimes in history, but more often than not, it just depends on how far back your histories go. And that's something that I mentioned in a different video, the war video, which that's a heartbreaker. I worked so hard on that thing. But it's whenever you make a video about purely your passion, sometimes it's always like the worst ones. But where someone was talking about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and the comment was like, it all depends on how far back you take your history. You say you're mad at me because of this car bombing, and we say we only had the car bombing because of your occupation, and you only have the occupation, and the back and forth and back and forth, and it's just, and everything, all these situations that we think are super simple, that are super straightforward, that I see people taking really hard stances on online, are much more complex. And I find that interesting. Like it because wanting to understand that, wanting to understand the origins of why people behave the way that they do, and why things like that happen, I think gives you a better understanding, and it inspires you. Okay, both in your games and in your conversations with other people. I think it's an important thing to think about. But let's see. Let's see, what are we talking about now? J-Dragon's palette grid is great for establishing what topics folks want to have in a game. Yeah, I like having a discussion with my players about what the themes of the game are going to be. Like, I don't know if any of my players are in chat right now. I don't recognize any screen names. So I'll divulge a secret. Like, right now I'm running a game where it's just Babylon 5 in a fantasy world. But none of my players have seen Babylon 5. Fantastic. But that deals with, like, slavery, racial animosity from generational conflicts, chaos versus law as opposing forces in the universe, greed and power, and like anybody who's seen Babylon 5 would know how you could extrapolate a fantasy game from that pretty easily, and how it would deal with all these heavy topics. TIMD, yes, favorite show, Babylon 5. It's free on Tubi. This is not an advertisement, but if you're in the United States, you can stream it free on Tubi. It has commercials that just work through the first season, because it lays the foundation for the other 4. But yes, do it. Thoughts on about including racism in games? Oh yeah. I do it all the time. I include prejudice in games, but it has to have a reason for it. I won't just have groups hate each other for no reason, because I have groups that work together with other groups and all that sort of stuff. But if I have a world where I've created a history where it would happen, like for instance, when I was establishing the Babylon 5 world, and I have the orcs as the Narn, which only makes sense if you've seen the show, but I have the orcs as the Narn, and the Centauri are the dwarves. So they hate each other, but there's a reason why they hate each other. There's a definite reason why that exists. So it's not just because you're different. It's because in the history of the world, there's a reason why these groups came into conflict. And so there's a reason why that animosity exists. Okay. So that's one thing that I do. And it's much more aligned with, like, and this is just, again, how I like to facilitate it. It's much more in line with them having two different groups that hate each other, as opposed to just like, you look different. So Um, I don't know if I should skip stuff. I'm trying not to skip stuff, but I'm behind on chat. One of the many factors... Okay. Find the topic enthralling. My setting marks a lot of political and cultural devices. Since certain races simply cannot intermix, leading to natural barriers is because one of the many factors that shape them, like how humans can make half offspring with elves and orcs, leading to more cooperation between those cultures. That's interesting. That is interesting. I like how different people's ideas on engaging with this. And I'm much more of like, I would rather have you stumble forward and mess up sometimes with the intention to do good in your own little games, than never try, because it's practice makes it possible. And with anything else, you got to practice on it. We are never completed projects. Do you hear about the potentially botched arrest on Luigi? No, I don't know what that is. Is that Luigi Mangione? I don't know what that's talking about. Okay. Thank you for loving the war video. I love that video. I thought that video was pretty good. Who are we supposed to back? Sounds like a question for my vampire players might be asking themselves right now. I love that. I love that moment where like the players have no idea what to do next. So here's the thing. The way that I run a game is I create this sort of detailed world where all these conflicts are intermittent, and maybe there's a background conflict, maybe there's an overarching conflict, like in a Babylon 5 setting, where, you know, there's that law versus chaos overarching conflict, but there's wars and conflicts all throughout that are not yet necessarily defined by that overarching conflict. But I routinely prep an intense amount before the campaign starts, and then I just plop the characters in, and they make choices, and I react. So all of my prep is just reacting to whatever they did in the last session. And I don't do any other prep. I basically don't prep after initial prep. I just react to what they did. And sometimes they're stuck in a situation where they're like, we don't know what to do next. And I was like, well, if you are heroes in the world, you don't have a guidebook. And you want to play perfect and have save points and don't want to make the wrong choice. I'm not going to, you know, grab you by the nose and lead you down the quote-unquote correct path. That's not how I want to play this game. And they know this about me by now, but man, that's just like, there's no like set storyline. There's no moment that I want them to, I have this moment that I've already written out. And it's like, no. My week in between sessions is just reacting to what they did. What did they do? What are the NPCs doing, good or bad? So tune in next week and we see how things react. That's how I run my games. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of Babylon 5 love it. Have a campaign that's basically just B5. It's a great way to do it. What stat block do I use for Zathras? Well, I mean, are you meaning Zathras or Zathras? Because you got to clarify. Or Zathras, for that matter. Heard of Red Rising. I read the first book a long time ago, and it felt like a Hunger Games novel. And I hear that it goes well beyond that afterwards, but maybe I should pick up the second book at some point. The Centauri, Narn, Dwarf, Orc Association makes sense. I thought so. Dwarves, Goblins, Centauri, Narn. Yeah, that makes sense too. That makes sense as well. Well, I wanted to make sure that it was a player character race or species. That's the only reason I picked Orc as opposed to like Goblin or something. Someone in forum once say they're setting humans come from elves, orcs, interbreeding for a few generations. Are they bards? Sorry, that's like a joke that only a few people would get. That's interesting. I've always seen it the other way around, that humans were like the progenitor species and all of the elves, dwarves, and orcs came from them. To be fair, some players don't care about that stuff. One of my players legit enslaved a rat man and tried to give it Stockholm Syndrome since he found it to be a cute token. That's it, no more reason. Players are weird. I've been playing with the same groups for a while. I've been playing with the group that I'm playing with right now for the last 5 years. We, because I just moved to a new city, I put an ad in for looking for a group in the city I just moved to, and they were the people who answered. This was before I had the Legal Kimchi screen name, but I didn't have a YouTube channel back then. And we met like 3 times, and then the pandemic hit, and we went online only for the rest of the. But I know these folks, and they know me, and half of them watch the channel, half of them don't. I respect that. That's fine. But they know my style. They know what I'm good for, and I know them. I know what they want, and so I try to put that in there. Where was I? Expert DMing. Again, 25 years that I've been DMing games. I'm old. I'm very old. I don't think people get... I didn't turn on this light. I was supposed to. I don't think people get how old I am. Like, I'm one of the oldest people who creates YouTube videos that I know. And I know a bunch of creators in 2 different fields, because I know a bunch of people who make video essays, and I know a bunch of people who make D&D content. And I'm older than most of them. React games, spiderweb games. Ooh. Favorite kind of games. They're my favorite kind. Like, I find running a campaign boring. With a written campaign. Like, I tried to run Curse of Strahd for my group. Everybody hated it. So, because it was even with something like Curse of Strahd, and trying to sandbox it as much as possible, it was too linear for us. I lucked into finding a group 5 years ago that really connected with my style of play, and we've been playing ever since. Keep those friends close, folks, because that's the dream. New officer just walked in and accused him of loitering, and then started searching him. Provided a fake ID under misinformed circumstances could lead to being an unfound. Oh, I should ask. I'm not a defense attorney. I don't do criminal defense and never have, but I do know criminal defense attorneys, public defenders, and criminal defense attorneys. Heroes, folks. Yeah, I don't think they're going to let them off the hook, even though constitutionally they might. That's the whole reason why we have Miranda rights, is because of the Miranda case where somebody didn't inform the individual of their rights. But that's assuming that the rule of law works, okay? That's not what we're getting into tonight, but hey, if chat wants to talk about it, we can talk about it. Red Rising goes full space opera. Should try it again. I mean, give it a shot. All magic races come from humans. Shadowrun. You know, I didn't know that until later. But yeah, that's kind of how I thought about it. I didn't know that. I didn't read about Shadowrun until I was like in my 30s. And I already had this idea that all the races came from humans. But Colville's world, no one knows where humans come from. They know it's not from there, though. Ooh, they're aliens. Interesting. Really into lore about work. Can interbreed with anything. Orcs can interbreed with anything. You basically get another orc. Humans are the limitation. Interesting. Fantastical settings with friends. So much more fun. It is. I'm trying to read all the messages. Thought Eberron had humans come from an unknown land as well. Could be. Don't know. And, okay, so we have a bunch of people who are almost 50. Okay? Or 50. The Legal Kimchi audience skews older. I don't know what it is. We're a bunch of old fogies. And some mature adults or mature younger folks who have joined along. I know folks who have like audiences that are primarily like high schoolers and young college folks, and half of my audience is apparently over 35. So this is yes, you play D&D when you're older. My father is in his 70s. He's still playing D&D with me every week. He 3D printed this dragon egg. And the dragon that came in the egg. Because he's still a huge nerd. Okay? That doesn't go away. He also printed a bunch of them for my kids, and my kids have been hauling it around all over the place. They, like, sleep next to them. It's amazing. They love it. So, yeah. There is a very real possibility you will be playing D&D or TTRPGs until you die. My father was playing D&D. Actually, no, he started with Empire of the Petal Throne. I get into that in the M.A.R. Barker video. He actually played Empire of the Petal Throne before he played D&D, and then he got into D&D, which just gives you an idea. So, but yeah, and absolutely, we're not old. We're still here. Rule of law. What about rule of cool? I mean, the rule of uncool seems to be ruling the day right now. Cyberpunk is too bleak for me. I get that. I mean, corporations ruling the world? It's rough. DA's raised no evidence for your guilt. Damn, I saw this funny meme, so you get 3 lives. That's funny. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm appropriately mature. Like, I was recently asked by the leftist cooks whether or not I'd ever received a comment that says grow up, because that's like a theme for their recent video. And I was just like, I've been insulted so many different ways on YouTube. Grow up is not one of the ways. No one has said that I was immature. People have said that I was whiny, that I was making stuff up to get mad at, that I was racist, that I'm any number of other insults, but never immature. Is a critical thinking requirement. I mean, I think so. I have better discussions in my Discord, my Patreon Discord, than I do with like other YouTubers sometimes. Oh, and yeah, like we all have like YouTubers Discords where we all hang out and talk to each other and stuff. Most people are cool, if you're curious. They may not like outwardly say the stuff that I say about TTRPGs, or because they're sometimes a little scared of their audiences and getting some backlash, but yeah. I get that. Not everybody wants to wade into these waters that I do with my videos, and I can respect that. I do, but that's my channel. Channel with an average runtime of an hour is too mature for Zoomers. Hey, some Zoomers, I'm sure, are awesome. There may be some in the chat right now. Okay. So, 41, daughter isn't even 1 yet. Okay. I mean, I'd love to get in that position. My kids are... My son's almost at the age. My other 2 kids, not so much. Looking forward to gaming with her. I can't wait. I can't wait. I know my daughter's going to be big into it when she learns how to read. She just gives me that vibe. Been on the fence about classic fantasy races, especially halflings and dwarves, just kind of othering Plenty of people play halflings. Who plays short human? I mean, I'm fine with a fantasy world that just has humans. I mean, I don't necessarily feel the need to have fantasy races. I'd love, or to have, or rather, if we're gonna have fantasy races, I like having them being really weird. But yeah, I don't know. I could go either way. Speaking of, I might get Petal Throne a read since I'm bound to make an Indian-based setting soon. Oh my goodness, that's awful. Awful joke. Society read Gibson and took it as a textbook, not as a cautionary tale. What is that tweet where it's like sci-fi author creates the evil machine, and some tech bro in Silicon Valley is like, we're generating the evil machine, like from the book. Might be the only one here who can't buy alcohol yet. I almost made myself an old-fashioned before going on stream. I usually drink whiskey on stream. What can I say? Oh yeah, don't drink alcohol. I grew up Catholic. I mean, they handed us alcohol at a very early age. Most people are cool. So there are some who are uncool, asking for a friend. Yes, some of them are uncool. I don't associate with those people. And I would imagine that if you're watching my videos, you probably don't watch theirs. Just throwing it out there. So you're probably fine. Like, the most common thing that I get asked is, like, people like Jenny D. Jenny D's awesome. Like, behind the scenes, very, very friendly person. You should drink alcohol when you are of age. Well, I mean, that's all based on weird. Torment Nexus, thank you. That's what it was. Kreen from Dark Sun of Best Fantasy Races. I mean, those are the bugs, right? The bug people. It's been a while since I read Dark Sun. Silicon Valley creates Terror Machine from the classic tale. Please don't build the Terror Machine. I mean, yeah, there's that. I get accused of being boring by a few of my players because like 3/4 of my characters end up being humans and sometimes half-elven or orcish. I mean, I ran a game recently where it was Fantasy Korea. And there was the Wijongbu and these different houses and all this sort of stuff. And it was a very big intrigue and kind of Game of Thrones-y vibe to it. There were no non-human NPCs in that entire game. I don't necessarily need it. And I didn't think that it really added to the flavor of it. Right? Especially adding in like Western fantasy species into a distinctly Korean fantasy game didn't make sense to me. My players made whatever characters they wanted from the characters options available in the player's handbook, but yeah, no, they basically existed in a magical version of Korea, and there were no elves or dwarves or whatever in Korea. Like, that's just not a thing. So maybe I'm boring too. We can be boring together. Thought about fantasy races that are fully justified and can't be a weird human. I found furries to be an example when they're justified. You know? I remember playing a game when I was a kid, a computer game. I think it was... I can't remember what it was, but it had a bunch of alien species, as many sci-fi computer games did, and one of them was just a cloud of gas, a sentient cloud of gas. And at one point, somebody tried to shoot a laser beam into the sentient cloud of gas, and it just passed right through. and it ended up shooting the lizard man behind him. and, and I just thought, there's a person who thought that through. That's funny. That's the kind of weirdness that I want sometimes, you know. Feel so much the D&D's grandfathered content just gets tossed into people's campaign without much consideration. I agree. Interesting side note. This is not a criticism of you. I just find this fascinating. The term grandfathered is based on an old Jim Crow era law that would deny African Americans the right to vote if their grandfather didn't have the right to vote. It was one of the main ways that they would make sure to inhibit black voters in the South. So in the legal profession, there's a push to remove the phrase grandfather clause from contracts, which that's the type of law that I do, is contract law. So interesting to know. Thought that was, again, most people don't know that, and all that. There's not an accusation or criticism. It's just interesting historical factoid. But you're absolutely right. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we just use from older D&D because it was in older D&D. And there's no rhyme or reason for it. We just do it. And I feel like there should be a reason for it. If it's going to include if the setting is going to include those races, it needs to have a reason for those folks to exist. I love it when chat talks to each other. Then I don't need to respond to that. It's just like, you guys have at it. You folks discuss amongst yourselves. Yeah, Planescape, phenomenal setting for just getting weird with it. Almost never roll a human in fantasy because I rolled one IRL and was dissatisfied with the results. Great answer. Well, that's why I keep coming. Like, I'm always Orc or Dragonborn in every computer game, like Baldur's Gate or whatever. Except for my first time trying out Baldur's Gate 3, I played a human sorceress because I was playing my favorite NPC that I've ever made. And that's, yeah. I haven't gotten past Act 1 in Baldur's Gate 3. And if you're sitting there like, oh, you've never gotten past Act 1 in Baldur's Gate 3. I keep making these videos, and it takes an incredibly long time. And sucks up most of my free time. The fact that, like, I have this YouTube channel means that I haven't beaten a PC game. I can't remember the last PC game I actually completed. I am incredibly far behind in all movies and TV shows. Yeah, like, I don't know if folks really get how long, like, that's why it takes me like 2 months to get a video out. I really want to be one of those creators who gets a video out every month. I've come to the realization that that's probably not going to be feasible. I got kids. I have a full-time job. I have a family that I enjoy spending time with, and I have a hard time finding time to paint minis and read books and play video games because I keep wanting to make these videos. So, all right. Yeah, I also, Dean Dix, you have an interesting point. Oh, Dark Lord Overlord was defeated 500 years ago, and the elf is like, oh, I guess my character wouldn't have been around for that. I hate the fact that there are, like, characters who are just thousands of years old because of that problem. I'm not 100% sure in the player's ability or my ability to run a game with a character who's lived for 1,000 years. That's a whole different can of worms. So, like, elves in my settings generally can live for 200 years max. Because that I feel I can wrap my head around. Once wrote The Stranger that all science fiction is about the myth of utopia and all fantasy about the myth of eugenics. I've heard that science fiction is... I mean, I get it. I don't agree with that statement. I mean, it's an interesting point, but I don't feel like I agree with that statement. Dwarves and halflings known as aliens outside of reality. Interesting. Far East campaign. One campaign takes place in not Korea. There are no dwarves, but clearly dwarven ruins. I make no comment about it, but players know something is wrong. Interesting. Not super familiar with Korean mythology. Are there mythological creatures or races that you could have leaned into? Yokai from Japan. You know what? I'm going to look it up because... Dokebi. Yeah, it is Dokebi. Dokebi, maybe. But we start getting into like mischievous spirits, and I guess that's like what elves and dwarves started off as well. It's like mischievous spirits from stories. But that's probably the mythological creature that most fits into the idea of like a character species in D&D. And I want to say they're kind of like Kender, if that makes sense to folks, like mischievous tricksters, not necessarily like Hobbit. I think the Kender would probably be the closest. Analog is the word I'm looking for. All right. Generic human. There's nothing wrong with generic human male. I mean, they keep telling people to write what they know. And if that's what you know, that's what you know. So much language like that not many people know about. Yeah, like there's tons of stuff like master bedroom, master agreements and subordinate agreements. We were like master and slave drives in computers. Like there's tons of stuff like that that we don't even think about. The fact that legal kimchi is indeed a real-life contract devil does not escape me. It's true. That's how I pay the bills. Took me 57 hours to get past Act 1 of BG3. It's a big game. It is a big game. That's a big game. I got past Act 1, and God, that took me a year. Who's got time for that? Can I recommend 1000X Resist for a PC game? 12 hours. Yeah. Like, even to the point where I've started, like, I've tried to kickstart getting back into reading, and specifically reading books that are not related to research into videos, because most of my reading is research into videos. And I started by reading stuff like Conan and things of that nature because they're like 150 pages or 200 pages, less than 300 pages. That's part of the reason I can't get into Sanderson. I don't have time for a 1,000-page book. I just don't. And my head kind of loses interest. Super heavy narrative and kind of political. Interesting. I'll take a look at it. 1000X. I gotta write that down somewhere. Alright. Been working on my own TTRPG, experimenting with having race be mechanically represented by something like a feat. The same feat could represent a magical ancestor or mutation. Kind of sounds X-Men-ish. Act 1 is Shakespeare, Act 2 is Sopranos, Act 3 is Friends. Interesting. I got the game 6 months ago, and I think it took me 200 hours to finish. Only finished it last week. Yeah, I believe it. Extremely long fantasy races. Fantasy race lifespans always annoy me. Yeah, me too. I don't think people actually, like, put the thought into it. They just, they're basically immortal. It's like, nice. how would that affect relationships, interactions, mentalities? We talk about maturity, and us being old here in our middle age. Good gravy, but we'd still be toddlers in Elven scale. Feel the fears of the GM, do the 1,000-year-old characters anyway. Like, I occasionally pull out a 1,000-year-old NPC. That's about it. Discourse about orcs and racist tropes start to think about fantasy human tropes as mirrored with tropes of whiteness. Never heard anyone discuss that, and I wonder if I'm imagining it. You're not imagining it. That's a real thing. I haven't discussed it yet. But that is something that has been ruminating in the back of my mind. Humans are basically the white people of TTRPGs. I don't mean that as a sort of negative or anything like that. I'm just stating that is how the archetypes are formed. Oddly enough, I've always thought of elves as being in not in fantasy, but in D&D-esque fantasy, Tolkien-esque fantasy specifically, as sort of being an analog for Western perceptions of East Asia, kind of a China, Japan type thing. And I'm not the only one who said that either. That's not, while it is a somewhat original thought, it is not a thought that I am the only one to come up with. So yes, your that tickle in the back of your brain, ponder it. It's absolutely a thing. Longevity brings issues, anachronisms, cultural inertia, sexuality. Oh yeah, that's a whole thing. Like, I feel old because I think about things with references back in the 90s. Like, the phrase hang up your phone doesn't make sense in the current technology. But it made sense to me. It's like Hive Indicator. You're imagining it. You are not imagining it. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. What? Grace as feat approach means the setting entry for elves is prescribed stat block. Multiple feats represent race with, wildborn, fey-blooded. I mean, you could make an interesting concept of character creation being like getting extra bonuses and feats for having wealthy parents. Because like that'll translate into skills and success if you can hire tutors when they're children. There's a lot of interesting things that you could do with character creation, if you really thought about it. And think about it. Really like human PCs that are encountering weird and fantastical stuff traveling through a pastoral safety of the town, deep dark woods, mythical underwoods. I also like, I don't know what the Western version of this is. Most of the people that I know refer to it as isekai. I think it's a Japanese phrase. I'm not good with Japanese. Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. Like, the idea that was ingrained in Western fantasy for a long time, outside of Lord of the Rings, where it was just a person from our world transported into the fantasy world. Again, going back to St. Cuthbert, I think it's a funny idea. I like playing around with it. Have you ever heard of the HFY writing community? I don't know what that is. Love ancient beatings, you need to make them borderline incomprehensible. Yeah, you got to be weird with them. If you think them out, like, if you put the time in to think about it, then you're fine. Probably. Okay, it's just that most people don't put the time in. 1000X Resist is in this month's Humble Bundle. May check it out. Races are defined via bioessentialism than other choices. Culture, history seems difficult for D&D to deal with since world building is often left to the DM. Yeah, I wish there were some guidelines to that. They could help some folks out. Oh yeah, I've got... This is upcoming. Book 2. Not too big. Michael Moorcock. On its way. By the way, it's not lost on me that your war video directly cited and then countered the book Colville cited in his war video. Yeah, because he's not a political scientist. I like Matt Colville. Don't get me wrong. Nothing really bad to say about Matt Colville. But he even admits it to himself. He doesn't look at it in the manner of like a political scientist or somebody who academically studies the topic. He looks at it as an author and somebody who's thinking about drama. That's fine. That's not how I look at it. So he probably has no idea who Kagan was, what Kagan's politics were, or how he kept pushing for the invasion of Afghanistan since the 90s, or the invasion of Iraq since the 90s. And that's fine. That's not his wheelhouse. Whatever. But it's really weird. Like I said in the video, it's like a whole bunch of folks who don't study a topic thinking that they know a lot about the topic and get more famous because of their commentary on a topic that they don't know anything about as opposed to the topic that they actually do know about. Kagan was a classics historian, not a political scientist. When you read political scientists talking about it, it's like, no, that's silly. That only makes sense if you don't know enough about it. It's kind of like when people talk about, like most of the people when they're talking on like biological sex or things like that, they only have like a high school understanding of biology. I only have a high school understanding of biology. That's why I don't chime in on stuff like that, because biologists can chime in on stuff like that. I don't know what I'm talking about in that issue. It's just knowing where you don't know what you're talking about. It's led to some players calling me a nationalist. Oh, I'm like jumping in the middle of a conversation with other folks. Never mind. Mentioned Sanderson having trouble starting because of page count. If you can do audiobooks, the narrator he has is great. I can do audiobooks, but my current job doesn't have me in my car that much. Thankfully, I work from home. Like, I work from this desk. I hate going into the office. And my boss is in a different state, and she said to me, look, you only really have to come in the office if we ask you to come in the office. Otherwise, don't bother. I took that to heart. Yeah, it is sort of a counter argument to Matt Colville's video. But again, I have nothing against that, and I think it's a very useful video for Dungeon Masters. I just think that there's more to it than that. And I think that some people make the mistake of taking the things that Matt Colville says and applying it to how they understand the real world. Because he kind of gives that impression. He's like, you argued persuasively to my understanding that this is why wars start. Yeah, no. No. Like, it's weird to me. It's somebody who doesn't do political science listening to somebody else who doesn't do political science about a political science topic and then saying, yep, they're right. And we wonder how that type of mentality permeates throughout politics and general conversation. It's a problem. It's a problem. It's so much more complicated than that. And the simple solution that sounds right to your ears is probably not the right solution. Generally. Not just on political science topics, pretty much anything. Black man, I always thought that elves and dwarves were more of a reflection of how people saw class. Nobles versus craftspeople. That's fascinating. Not color. That's interesting. I like it. Here's the thing. Everybody takes it based on their own experience. Here's a for instance, orcs. I've seen people say that orcs, in the way that they're portrayed, are representative of African cultures, and I've seen that. Obviously, I've argued the point that orcs, in the way that they're portrayed, are indicative of Mongolian steppe culture. The Mongolian steppe culture thing is both because of Tolkien's direct reference to that, and because of the manner in which orcs are portrayed. But I have argued persuasively, that, you know, black creatives who are or black people who analyze fantasy argue that there are tropes being pulled from representations of indigenous African culture, and it makes sense because, one, when fantasy writers write about their fantasy worlds, they include their own beliefs, prejudice, predilections, opinions, all that sort of stuff gets thrown into the soup. Two, we are more attuned to the things that we're experienced with and we're aware of. It's like when a POC like myself sees a situation and says, that's kind of racist. And you get a white person who looks at the same situation and says, that's not racist. Part of it is because I'm more experienced with that personally than you might, so I may be able to see it better. So when somebody is like, oh, I get more vibes that it's, you know, a critique of this, that, or the other thing, sometimes that's just because of that's their perspective, that's where they're coming from, and yes, the author could have put that in there. Okay, maybe it was Tolkien, maybe it was somebody who came after Tolkien, maybe it's the modern depictions made by modern writers who have their own prejudices that they're inadvertently putting into their work. It happens. It's probably in stuff that I make. You know, do my best, but I can't say that it's completely free of everything. I make mistakes. Humanity, F yeah. Humanities as the most badass beings in a sci-fi setting. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's always weird to me. It rings to me as like American exceptionalism placed into a sci-fi setting, and I don't like it in either setting or circumstance. Unless it's an alien invasion story. It's like Independence Day. I can get behind it in Independence Day. It's very specific. Fantasy settings are a lot more interesting if you talk about the actual biology of the species. Consider the environment that determines what cultures would arise. I agree. I understand when people disagree with that statement. So, I can see it both ways. Read very differently if written by the Brits, the French, never mind the Egyptians, the Koreans. Absolutely. New orc idea. Orcs lived several million years ago as the cavemen. They just got thawed out of the iceberg because of the fantasy global warming. I mean, that's an interesting idea, but that gets into that gets into the tropes of sort of the primitive native or primitive indigenous. That's a whole thing. It's like when Critical Role had that big kerfuffle with the season 3 intro that had a lot of British colonialism imagery, you know, because it harkens back to the sort of primitive cultures being sort of a less than thing. You're tiptoeing on a weird concept, a concept that can have some problems with it. It can be handled well. I'm not saying like completely don't do it. I'm just saying you got to understand what goes around and what people will think about it. So it's like when I was doing sensitivity reading, and I don't think some folks get what sensitivity reading is. It's not necessarily just saying this is offensive to me as a representative of an entire subclass of person or whatever. It's more that like you have to think about not only what tickles your brain about it, but like how it could be perceived. You do a review of not only what you think and what you believe, but what other people could legitimately hold as beliefs, even if you don't agree with it. And that's why sensitivity reading is kind of an interesting thing. I like doing it as a side gig. Really puts you in the perspective of other folks. Games Workshop did in fact grab the Savage Orc overhaul, and made it a lot of one-to-one comparisons with African battles against the Empire of Sigmar. Yeah, see? GW. Like, I have a love-hate relationship with most of the stuff that Games Workshop does. I like their minis. Oh, you can't see it. It's off camera. It's over there. Never mind. One more thing about the sci-fi, where the Marines in space pretty much have to be the good guys because of the demographics of those that read the books in stores. I root for the Tyranids. I think they're the only good guys in 40K. I'm also a Tyranid player, but when I did play. Lord of the Rings films definitely went to the class distinctions. You can hear the accents especially. Yep. There is that. Might be a connection to via technology. Various nomadic cultures have certain similarities to the nomadic lifestyle. You know, I that's the thing. I love making orcs into steppe nomads. I actually love that. I kind of steer into the skid where I take the idea that Tolkien based orcs on the Mongolian steppe people, but I take it a step further where I have a sort of loving fascination with Mongolian steppe culture. And so I try to embrace it, and they have this rich culture. And like the orcs in my setting are more egalitarian, while they're aggressive to other groups outside of their, tribal communities. If you enter into the tribal community, if you're accepted into it, they have no care what your racial background is or where you came from, so long as you're part of their tribe. So it's much more like that type of union. And, gender doesn't matter to them, race doesn't matter to them. It's all that. And they're nomadic people, and, they have the throat singing, Tuvan for throat singing, which I love so much. Like, I really just, turn it into a fleshed out culture and draw in things from the actual Mongolian Empire. Maybe that's bad. I don't know. That's just... I like doing that. I kind of like turning it on its head, trying to make a positive out of a negative. Let's try to remember writing. There was Tolkien D&D, the product. It needs to be seen as much. Yep, gotta remember. It is a product. How do you deal with evolution in scenarios that are basically creationists? Yeah, well, this kind of goes back to the religion video, because I don't view religion the way that many people do in fantasy, right? Because I don't view it as an absolute certainty, as some people do in fantasy. They're like, well, you can interact with the gods. You can actually heal people with spells. And I was like, yeah, people can throw fireballs, and no one thinks that comes from the gods. So why would healing necessarily come from the gods? And the actual interactions with the deities are very rare, few and far between. So I like to think of it as, and like Cuthbert being a deity in the fantasy worlds, he's not a creating deity. He's just a guy who ascended into godhood by mistake. So I take more of the view of the folklore of the people is that they were created by these gods. Whether or not they were actually created by those gods is a different question. The gods in question, like Moradin in the Forgotten Realms, forged the dwarves. Well, of course he would say that. But who would be there to dispute it? Did he actually do it? I think that's a question that you can leave unanswered. And I think that you could, even if you have the creationist starting point, you could have them evolving over time. And depending upon the age of your world, it could be millennia, it could be millions of years since the creation of these peoples. And at that point, who knows what they started from? Let's talk about where they're going. I think that's an interesting question. I mean, the fantasy is more interesting, but fantasy species aren't as interesting as when they are humans with ears or beards or tusks. Yeah, that's true. What what do they call that? The problem with like different hats or something? Where it's just like one little thing and, oh, they're not human because of this one thing. What do you think about bioessentialism as a factor, as in nature and nurture both taking effect in humanoid people? Example, in my setting, wood elves are made for guerrilla war. Okay, so I don't know if that's necessarily bioessentialist. I think what you're doing is you have a culture of people who are adept at a certain type of warfare because of the way that their culture has evolved. That's different. Like, the Mongolian Empire was as powerful and efficient as it was at warfare because of the nature of how their combat evolved, because of their surroundings, because of how their cultures developed, because of the utilization of horses, because of the living on the plains and being nomadic. Saying that they were good at warfare is not a bioessentialist thing. It's just a development from their culture and surroundings. Okay? So I don't think that's a bioessentialist problem. There aren't humans necessarily any less interesting. Well, they know instinctively how to use a longbow and sword, hide in the forest. Well, that's not instinct. That's learned behavior. Okay? They're just trained at a very young age because of the way they play, the way they interact with each other, the way they hunt, and all of that. Yes, it lends itself to guerrilla warfare. Again, not bioessentialism. I think that's just how their culture operates. And so I think you're fine. I think that's a fascinating way to do it. I think that's the right way to do it. All right. I like orcs being related to elves. You know, yeah, that's a good way to do it. Orcs are the good guys in 40k, regrow limbs, head stuff, don't understand the other races can't survive dismemberment. And they just believe. I love that. Orcs as step modes, I'm a fence at it because it makes the setting less likely to have nomadic humans who play a beautiful human archer when beautiful elven archers exists. See, I don't. I just think that, like I said, they would be accepting of nomadic humans in their tribes and not even worry about it. They wouldn't care that they're humans. And I don't know. This is the way I play it. Planet of Hats. Thank you. Gods thing. I like to have gods be broken up into their own races and tribes, like some IRL religions. I think I'd use something like fantasy races more with gods than PC races. I get that. That's part of having that culture. So into a setting where one group of gods are obviously a collection of AI and nobody comments. I mean, that sounds fun. Science fantasy right there. Talking about rubber forehead. I don't know what that means. Funny. It's not bioessentialism that's adapting to your environment. Yeah, there we go. Okay, glad we could help. Orc bows are specific to orcs because most species have two thumbs, don't have two thumbs, and a big central digit. Oh, you're doing... Okay. I'm like doing this with my hands. Okay. I get it. Final Fantasy XIV has an interesting system where the normal player races like elves, humans, tiny folk are humans, and freakier sentient species are beast tribes. If you want to talk about problematic stuff, it is not a purely European thing. That is also the Japanese doing a thing. And maybe they're doing it articulately. I don't know. I don't play Final Fantasy. But being a Korean, I don't put it past the Japanese having woefully bad things in their media sometimes. As do everybody. It's like a point that I make in the monster video. Everybody has it. Everybody has atrocities. Everybody has racism. Everybody has these sort of terrible things in their history. Okay, people claim that I'm like anti-white because I point out the stuff in European culture and history. but that's my education. That's my background. Like I could point out the stuff with Japan and it's actually a challenge problematic game. That makes sense. I can call out Japan in certain issues that it has with regards to racism and things like that, and atrocities that it's committed, because I know that because of my background being Korean. I can talk about Spain because I have a background in their history as well. But like there are limitations to what I know because the education system didn't teach me about that. And so if you only teach me about atrocities committed by Western European groups, because that's the only history that we're learning, that's all I can comment on. I'm trying to learn, but it's something that I have to do on my own. Rubber foreheads refer to the way Star Trek made Klingons. There we go. Did they even do the rubber foreheads in the original Star Trek? Or was that just started with Next Generation? Because I remember in the original Star Trek, they just seemed like dark-skinned Mongolians, for the lack of a better term. Like they were taking those tropes and like amalgamated a bunch of racial stereotypes from a bunch of different racial groups and then plopped it in there. They have weird 5-toed pig evolved feet, but Planet of Hats is a planet where everybody there is the same. Rubber forehead is like Star Trek aliens. They're humans. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's like I hate when an alien culture in a sci-fi show, and even Babylon 5 is guilty of this sometimes, where like all the aliens have one religion, one language, one culture. It's bizarre to me. That is bizarre. Like one of the things that I loved from like second edition is having different types of elves, and I never viewed the different types of elves as being like a species difference, like gray elves versus wood elves or whatever. I just thought of it as like different cultures of elves. I thought that was a more interesting way to take it. Thank you, Joel. I appreciate that you liked the last video. I hope you like the other ones too. Because it takes so long to make those videos. It's so hard. I am knee deep in the next one, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I mean, a lot of budgetary issues in the original Star Trek. I try not to hold that against them. It's still my favorite of the Star Trek series. Maybe Discovery has taken over for that. I haven't finished Discovery yet, and I haven't started Brave New World. So, or Strange New Worlds, I should say. Hello, Alexis. How are you? I hope you're having a wonderful evening joining us here. You saw them as different races in the same elf species? Yes. I saw the different elf races as just being different cultures in the same elf species. B5 makes sense to me, the species that achieve space exploration as a unified language, at least. God, I hope not. Because we're on the precipice of space exploration, and even as an English speaker, I don't want us all speaking English. I don't know. And we told you're the Trojan horse of education for D&D YouTube. It's always fun to me when people get it. Like, I keep saying, folks, like, I like to discuss a lot of different topics under the framework of D&D. But a lot of my topics are not directly about D&D. And I think that's what the audience appreciates. I am not telling you how to make combat more exciting. There are tons of other videos that'll tell you how to make combat more exciting. I'm here to make you think about other stuff. Make you think about the game. Make you think about stuff outside the game. Showcase how the game can make you think about stuff outside the game. So yeah, that's the point. You got it. Strange New Worlds is very good. I will try it. I will give it a shot. Green and purple Drazi. Why do you hate them? Because he is purple. I am green. If you haven't seen Babylon 5, watch it. It's free. It's streaming. You can go find it. You have to watch commercials. That's because it's not on any of the streaming services without commercials right now. But again, small price to pay. I used to watch all of my television with commercials. I'm sure that you can get through it. Any hints on what the next video is going to be about? Yeah, I can give you a hint. I don't like committing to the topics of the next video because I have had situations where I announced on a live stream or on Blue Sky or whatever that, oh, this is going to be the next video. And then I completely changed my mind and I made a completely different video. But I'm really into this one. I think it's a fun topic, and it's an interesting one, but I feel like I'm like going into a whole bunch of rabbit holes with talking about third spaces and going in through like the D&D tavern, the gaming tavern, which is a place that I love to go. That's where I play D&D with my friends if we meet in person. And third spaces in general. I think it's a fascinating topic, and there's a lot of stuff to get into. Strange New Worlds is so good. All right, I'll give it a shot. Sci-fi series where a group of aliens with different languages stop and pull over their phones to translate between themselves. You know? My biggest gripe with Star Trek is that half of everybody in the entire fleet should be Chinese or Indian. Like, if we're just extrapolating the population of the Earth and thinking about, one, there should be a whole lot more mixed people in Star Trek. I think there's been like canonically 2 or 3 mixed people in the history of Star Trek. But like considering the numbers of population, and I don't mean this specific, like there needs to be more Indian and Chinese characters specifically in these shows. It doesn't make sense that's not like the majority, like somewhere between a third and a half of everybody in those shows should be one of those two cultures. Statistically. Anyway. Comment I was going to make about Strange New Worlds' portrayal of Spock as a mixed person. Oh, I've seen that. So, like, because of the circles that I run in with mixed individuals online, I saw like the preview of that particular episode. Is it annoying? Yes. I see stuff like that all the time. It's not a complete deal breaker for me. If it's a good show, it's a good show. If it has a moment where I'm just like, ugh, then it's like, I like the show How I Met Your Mother. That is a deeply transphobic show. Like, consistently, over and over in that show. And it sucks. But, I mean, there is no such thing as non-problematic art. I lean into the elf thing. The elves being a refugee species, but they interact with magic uniquely. Interesting. English is going to eat the other languages. Then again, English isn't even one language. 6 languages with an overcoat pretending to be a language. I mean, that's not incorrect. Could be your 35 plus demographic comes from most of us no longer being in school. Y'all are educated. You're up to snuff. I love it. You give Is This Cool Horse. We're excited. What? You give Is This Cool Horse. And we're all excited. Then oh. Okay. You give us this cool horse, and then we're all excited. All of a sudden, a bunch of Greeks jump out and stab our brains with knowledge. Took me a second. It's getting late. I'm probably going to wrap up in about 15 minutes or so. Rule change. Caught up in committee. B5. Love it. Ivanova is God. You are a DM. No plans on showcasing your setting in a video. I did a little bit of that in my politics video. But I don't have a specific setting. I change my setting and create an entirely new world every time I have a campaign. Because that's the fun for me. I spend most of the campaign, which is like a year or so, creating the next campaign setting. I love creating campaign settings, so I'm constantly doing it. I am not the type of person who has a singular campaign setting that I just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. Nope. I scrap the campaign setting after the campaign, create an entirely new campaign setting, and then go for it. That for me is where the fun is. I could talk about how I create a campaign setting. I could make a video on that. Don't worry, we'll all just speak Esperanto. I mean, that's basically, what, a little bit of Spanish and English at the same time? I could do that. Literally designed an entire game around the line because I have asked you to, because your loyalty to our people should be greater than your ambition, because I am Blizzard Church. So the Ambassador Mallory character in my Babylon 5 campaign is one of the best, most fun NPCs I have ever played. My players hate him in the best way. I think they just kidnapped him. It's fantastic. And I even tried to do a voice. It's like a bad impression of Peter Jurassic's portrayal of Ambassador Mallory. But it's delicious. I love role-playing that character. Which rule set do you normally use since you're changing your setting for each campaign? 5e, because I know it like the back of my hand. And when I say that, I don't play 5e necessarily rules as written. I play 5e from the perspective of somebody who started with first edition, played a lot of second edition, played a lot of third edition, enjoyed fourth edition, and then moved into fifth edition. So there's a lot of assumptions that I make while I'm DMing a game that's probably based in second edition and third edition stuff. I include a bunch of fourth edition stuff. So it's sort of an amalgamation of D&D from all the editions. So I say fifth edition because that's kind of the framework that I'm using, but it's a mixture of everything that I've played so far. Duke of Argo for the win. Somebody was paying attention. The Duke of Argo. Oof. I love that. I miss that campaign setting. I still have a map of it somewhere around here. That was basically my fantasy Spain. Somebody, like a Spanish speaker, an actual Spanish person, commented on that video. It was like, wait a minute. A lot of the names that you're using are based on ancient kingdoms from Spain. And I was like, yeah, that's on purpose. Because the common in that setting was just people speaking Spanish. Londo should have been kidnapped more often. I mean, he may be my favorite character from the show. And he goes on a journey in that show. You going to be using the 50th anniversary rules and classes when your players make new characters? Is that the new stuff that just came out? Because, yes. We're already on that new stuff. I think one of my players is actually playing a talent from the MCDM rules. Because being a Babylon 5 game, I needed telepaths. So that's how I incorporated telepaths into the game, is using the talent from MCDM. Except they don't, like, we use Fantasy Grounds, and they don't have the talent on Fantasy Grounds. But the player who wanted to play the talent is a computer programmer at a major company, and he's really talented. Like, he's like I have two players in my group who are computer programmers, and one of them is just like, no. He's good. I'm okay at my job. He's amazing. And so he created a plugin for Fantasy Grounds himself. He programmed it himself and then put it into the game based on the talent rules that he purchased. So it works in Fantasy Grounds. I was like, if you're going to put that much effort into it, you can be whatever class you want. Yeah, kimchi flavored 5th edition, I think, is a good way to put it. It's spicy and fermented. Never got to play D&D, but I consume a lot of D&D content, like the channel and the Adventure Zone. Any recommendations for other great D&D content? Am I a poser? We're all posers. Don't worry about it. Fake it till you make it. But other content, like Super Geek Mike is pretty good. Friend of the channel. I am biased. But Colville's probably really good. To get your basics on. Old Colville. Like, the old videos that he started off with are a good goldmine for people starting off. But don't necessarily stick with D&D. I know that's what we all talk about, but it doesn't make it the best game. It's a good game, but it doesn't mean it's the best game. Like, I'm a real big fan of dice pool games like Savage Worlds. I played Pathfinder 2nd Edition. That was pretty good. I did not like Pathfinder 1st Edition at all, but I wasn't a big fan of D&D 5e or 3.5. But 2nd Edition, they got some interesting ideas in that one. So, recommend that too. As for 2nd Edition channels, I don't know anybody who does Pathfinder stuff, except maybe the Rules Lawyer, which is funny because I almost took that as the name for my channel, but I decided against it. He's also an Asian attorney who does TTRPG content. But yeah. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Some of the channels aren't even active anymore. Some people have retired from the game. I don't know. Working with the team on a July Kickstarter for an Aztec-inspired 5e setting. I want to run by you how we're handling different races, species like that. Lucas, when it comes to that sort of stuff, if you're asking me for like a professional review, we can discuss that. You can send me a message on Blue Sky or whatever. I have done professional reviews of products before. I have my name in a couple of TTRPG books. It's pretty cool. But yeah, so there's that. Saying your player playing the talent class has talent? Yes, he's very talented. You are hearing that correctly. Yeah, I'm sure Pathfinder 2 has a couple of good channels. I don't know who they are. They don't show up on my feed. I don't look for them. So, How to Be a Great GM has a huge library of stuff. Yes, he does. Big recommend as well. I know he's not active anymore. Doesn't mean his old stuff isn't still gold. All intents and purposes, never played 5th edition. Played like 4 one-session games, half of which weren't even supposed to be one-shots. I get it. Yeah, there's no problem with that. Play what you like. You don't have to play the new system. Old systems work just fine. I still think 2nd edition is a pretty sweet system. I think 3rd edition was a decent system. Like I said, I like Savage Worlds. I like the old Cortex system. The original Cortex system that came out for Firefly RPG or Serenity RPG back in the day. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to play the game. Enjoy yourself. So, ton of 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 is a good game. Have fun with that. Run Fate Core. I've wanted to play Fate Core. I've never played it. I appreciate the gushing. And that's fantastic. And my rate for TTRPG stuff is not the same as my attorney rate. Much smaller. My attorney rate, big. TTRPG stuff, much less. You have 5 weekly games. Great googly moogly. I have 2 and I feel like I'm... No, I have 2 and I feel like I could probably do 1 more. Still a fan of World of Darkness. I've never played World of Darkness. I want to. I have a hard time playing, though. not like I have a hard time being a player in an RPG. I'm so used to being behind the screen. It is tough for me not to be. It's like the meme from the Star Wars TV show. I like the idea of it, but not the truth. D&D 1E, when I can get players. I recently did a one-shot doing Tomb of Horrors with a couple of other YouTubers. I think it was Cunic on Cunic's channel. And it was like me, William SRD, Unimportant Hero, and I think Crow from Crow's Perch. And we played 1E Tomb of Horrors. And the group was great. The mechanics were awful. I'm not a huge fan of 1E anymore. I think I had some rose-colored glasses to it, but I prefer the refinements that came out of 2E, I guess. And I felt like I was missing some of those. And there's not a huge difference, but it's the little stuff that, I don't know, it just did something for me. Maybe it's like the feeling that I get when I eat East Asian food that isn't Korean. It just tastes a little off. So I go back to eating Korean food. It's like I had a person like ask me, it's like, hey, have you ever had this type of Japanese food? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And they're like, how do you not know what this food is? It's just like, I'm not Japanese, dude. I don't know what to tell you. It's Korean food. I could have a discussion with you all day. Oh man, Ars Magica, Scum and Villainy. Whew, man, I would love to play that. I'm working like Aaron Voigt, I think is how you say his name, who's also a YouTuber you should check out if you like my video essays, but you wish they talked a little bit more about the TTRPG game, especially indie games. Aaron Voigt's the channel for you. Go check it out. It's an awesome channel. I think he just hit 3,000 subscribers. He deserves a lot more. It's a lot of phenomenal stuff. But he and William SRD and I are going to be playing a one-shot of the Going Rogue, kind of Star Wars-esque RPG. It's not going to be like a content thing. We're just doing it for fun. So I'm looking forward to that. World of Darkness is wild. I can't imagine playing it not set in the 1990s. Well, I was around in the 90s. I remember what the 90s were like, so I think it would be fun playing in that setting. Setting review. You get it. Play a Gothic campaign and experience a TPK at the hands of fear and hunger. Like, I made my dungeon video and a whole bunch of people was like, why didn't you mention fear and hunger? I was like, I don't play video games that much, folks. You want to talk about fear and hunger, go Super Eye Patch Wolf's game or video. I don't know what you want me to say. Like, why didn't you talk about Delicious Dungeon? I don't watch a lot of TV either. Especially anime. I don't watch a lot of anime. I don't know what you want me to say. You want to talk about Babylon 5? I'll do that all day. GM feels more comfortable. What about GM feels more comfortable than you than being a player? I'm the villain. I mean, hell, I'm a lawyer, so I'm already comfortable being the bad guy. I think it's like it really feeds into ADHD and always being engaged. There's never a downtime moment, like almost never. I love playing different characters so I don't get bored of the one character. I love having a dynamic, reactive game. And I love knowing what's gonna happen to a certain extent. Like, the uncertainty sometimes can get to me. And I think it's just a little bit. The few times that I've played, because I'm sort of a forever GM, when somebody takes over and actually runs a game for me, they tend to be people who've never run a game before. And yeah, so they're not as experienced. I haven't had a really experienced GM run a game for me as a player. So maybe that's part of it. Your opinion, if you ever a weekday afternoon free up, I can hook you up with another game, probably. Sadly, probably not going to happen. My afternoons on the weekdays are usually playing with my kids or feeding them. That's why I do these streams at like 8 o'clock in the evening, because it's after all of my kids are asleep. And they're sleeping soundly. I've had no issues. GMing is the best way to deal with that horrible goblin whispering in your ear telling you that your next PC should be optimized. My NPCs, I love my NPCs. They're like the player characters I never play, but I never get bored of them because I get to discard them every session. Highly recommend Delicious and Dungeon. The interspecies dynamics are really good. It's great fun. Animals become food. I mean, I eat a lot of things that some folks might consider weird. So, that doesn't bother me. I might check it out. I think that's on Netflix. GMing because of ADHD resonates so hard. I have trouble playing and always feel like a bad player because my mind wanders and I can't focus. You get it. My Monday group is all GMs. We rotate several games. It's wonderful. See, that's the dream. I am the first GM for most of my players. And I am the only GM for all of my players. Nope, like, my dad, who's in the generational game, he's like, I'm retired from GMing. I GM for you kids for like 20 years. He's talking about my brothers and I. I'm done. I was like, you know what? That's fair. You've done your time. But he's the only other experienced GM. Got the dad whisperer voice right now. Don't wake up the kids. Exactly. They're right upstairs. I hurt my thumb bending it backwards, if you're curious about what that is. Like, it's fine. It's just, I wear this to make sure it doesn't get worse. GMing and optimization are the few rules-supported ways to engage with the game outside of the session. It's like that reactive stuff that I do in between sessions. That's the fun for me. Letting him do DM around the game while teaching someone to drive. You have to resist the urge to grab the wheel. That's a smack of truth. DMs are closed on Blue Sky. That's fine. I think it's because I'm not following you. So I will follow you back. Just for that. All right. We play from 1 to 4 on your time on Mondays. Well, that's me ignoring work. They get mad at me. Guilt trip him into being the DM. And on that note, I was supposed to wrap this up in 2 hours. It's been great. I like the reception that the recent video has had. To be honest, it's doing pretty well. It's not doing amazingly, but the vehicle right before that has been like the biggest video in the history of my channel. So I figured it wouldn't do quite that type of numbers, but somebody just subscribed. What? Uh-oh. No, don't move the background. Okay, I gotta stop futzing with my stream. All right. Frieren, yeah, I've heard, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I've heard good things about that as well. I do have a day job, and it pays a lot more than making videos. I wish I could quit. There's a Patreon. Like, if you all want to get me to the point where I can quit my job and make videos, I would. And I would just be pumping these out all the time. So there's that. Like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you haven't with your friends. All that sort of stuff. Even if you have nobody following you on Blue Sky or Twitter. That's it all helps. Please quit your job. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I could still make a bunch more videos if I just quit my job. I don't need to abandon my kids, right? And I appreciate that you all appreciate the videos and the amount of work that goes into them. I've been doing this for almost 5 years now. Okay. And it's funny because I point this out because it's kind of interesting to me. I'm friends with Zoe B. I don't say that as to name drop, right? If you don't know who Zoe B is, it's a video essayist. She has a channel with I think 400,000 subscribers or 300,000 subscribers, something like that. It's huge. She was able to quit her job. I remember when we had the same number of subscribers. We both had 1,000 at about the same time. And that's when we found out about each other. And it's wild to me because there's a part of me that is was wow, that would be amazing to be able to do this as a full-time job. And there's a part of me that's terrified of the prospect of doing this as a full-time job. So yeah, because through conversations with her, I've seen the realities of what it is. But anyway, I need to get off of this thing. I need to go to sleep or go back to working on the video. So thank you so much for hanging out. I'm going to try to do more live streams once in a while. But yeah, if you all can share it around, feel free to do so. It really helps the channel. But if not, I'm still making these regardless. If I was making no money off of these videos, I'd still make the videos. It just, it's just the speed at which they get out. So appreciate it. Thank you all so much. I'll see you in the next video.